Hello and welcome to another fact-discussing and block-busting episode of What Happened, the show where we... Wait, what are we doing again? The Borderlands movie? Jesus, okay, in that case, what's the opposite of blockbusting? Block repairing episode of What Happened, the YouTube-style pop culture media show that cracks open the darkest vaults from all over the entertainment industry. And you're all in luck, because today's sordid little story will not only be doing that, but delve into the realm of complete and utter movie mismanagement, which includes, but is not limited to, financial fumbling, creative uncertainty, poor timing, catastrophic casting, and just plain old bad luck, which resulted not only in producing the biggest box office bomb of 2024, but one that took 9 years to fail. So ready your fusion-powered, acid-spewing rocket machine guns and psycho masks as I answer the question, what happened to Borderlands? The movie!
Could you turn this shit off?
In 2014, Gearbox's premier FPS franchise was let's just say, in flux. While the 2012 sequel was an unmitigated hit by every possible metric, the newest release, the pre-sequel, was seen as divisive by a sizable percentage of fans, so much so that I still get requests to cover it to this day, but let's just get this movie out of the way first, because it's far more bizarre. So, in 2015, with the pre-sequel now in the rear view and having not done as well as its numbered predecessor, it seemed a little odd for Gearbox, 2K Games, and Lionsgate Entertainment to announce that they were teaming up to bring Borderlands to the silver screen, but that's exactly what they did, and even in these early days, things seemed a bit off. You see, in May of that year, early reports started circulating throughout the trades and websites that Lionsgate were tapping writer/director Leigh Whannell to helm the adaptation, no doubt due to their shared success working on the Saw franchise, of which he was the co-creator of. The report even mentions that the tone and style they were aiming for was going to be Mad Max by way of Guardians of the Galaxy, which turned out to be scarily accurate and not at all surprising. Fury Road had just wowed cinema goers that very month, and Guardians had been one of 2014's biggest hits. This report, therefore, seemed rather credible, and all but confirmed, until it was somewhat deconfirmed that August when a press release finally went out, formally announcing that work on the movie had officially begun and introduced a select few of the creative heads of the project. Interestingly, one of them just so happened to be an old friend of What Happened, good old Avi Arad, who, as of this writing, is insisting that the Metal Gear Solid movie he announced back in December of 2020 is still a real thing. Anyway, the official press release was all sunshine and rainbows, with everyone promising the world, but not giving any real tangible details on who would be writing or starring in it, which is usually the case for a press release like this, where 90% of the time, at least a director is attached to drum up interest. Leigh Whannell wasn't mentioned at all, which, fine, maybe they hadn't sealed the deal on him just yet, but it seemed like they hadn't sealed the deal on anyone. After the announcement, the project went dark for several years, which, if you are not familiar with movie-centric What Happened episodes, means that nobody could deliver a script that satisfied everyone, and in this particular case, there was a lot of, everyone. Borderlands has something like 18 different people in its producing credits, including Avi, his brother Ari, various Lionsgate execs, former Lionsgate execs, 2K's Strauss Zelnick, and of course, Randy Pitchford. This long back and forth seemed to be one of, if not the earliest and perhaps biggest issues that befell the production, because it pushed everything way past the intended timeline. Without a complete, or at least near complete script, it's hard to nail down a director. Without a director, it's hard to nail down stars. And given the very obvious timing of when the project was announced, it's pretty clear that the movie was originally supposed to open in theaters within spitting distance of 2019's Borderlands 3, a date they would miss by a lot. During this long gestation period, a number of writers were hired to try and crack the script, such as an R-rated take by Aaron Berg in 2016, and another attempt in 2018 by Cloverfield Paradox scribe Oren Uziel, but neither of these could satisfy the army of producers, and thus got no closer to production. This changed in 2019 when the entire planet of Pandora cheered in unison when it was announced that an incredible rising talent had joined the team. Craig Mazin, who got his start writing lighter fare such as Scary Movie 3 and 4 and The Hangover 2 and 3, hit it big when he started developing the incredible HBO miniseries Chernobyl, which stunned critics and fans when it debuted that same year. He was one of the hottest names in Hollywood at the time, so he got to work to crack that Borderlands problem and solved it in short order. His take was praised by all the producers and immediately went into production. Which is something I would be saying to you if this wasn't what happened. Throughout all of this, you may have noticed the lack of something, and it's kind of important. It took several years for Lionsgate, 2K, and Gearbox to convince a director to take this thing on. Leigh Whannell was never once officially confirmed, but he was free at the time of his rumored involvement, having just wrapped up his first directing gig on Insidious Chapter 3. But evidently he was either never in serious contention for the position, or he wisely opted to not sign on the dotted line. He would go on to write, produce, and direct 2018's kinetic actioner Upgrade, and then pulled triple duty once again on 2020's reinvention of The Invisible Man, which was also another critical and commercial hit. This inability to retain up-and-coming talent is kind of a running theme with Borderlands, as it wouldn't be the last time its execs and producers would make the wrong call. One such example is in February of 2020, where another press release went out, confirming that production was going to start by the end of that year, as well as proudly proclaiming that they had finally secured a director, that being Eli Roth. Now, it's not controversial to say that Mr. Roth has had a spotty filmography. For every Cabin Fever or Hostel, you have the absolutely dreadful Knock Knock, or the even worse Death Wish remake. And then you have something more in the middle, like his attempt at family-friendly PG-13 fare, The House with the Clock and Its Walls. Now, while those are some of his directing credits, he also has several writing ones as well, and his comments from the press release made it pretty clear that some things were going to change. I'm so excited to dive into the world of Borderlands, and I could not be doing it with a better script, producing team, and studio. I have a long, successful history with Lionsgate. I feel like we have grown up together, and that everything in my directing career has led to a project of this scale and ambition. I look forward to bringing my own energy, ideas, and vision to this wild, fun, and endlessly creative world of the game. Randy Pitchford and everyone at Gearbox have been incredibly supportive of my ideas. It really feels like a perfect storm of creators coming together. We are out to make a new classic, one which the fans of the game will love, but also one which will find new audiences globally.
That sounds like some wacko BS, right?
Now, if he felt that there was no better script than the one Craig Mazin handed in, it's a little curious as to why it went through 2 additional rounds of rewrites, which clearly meant somebody wasn't happy with it, and when you have 18 different producers, co-producers, and executive producers, your guess is as good as mine. The first rewrite was handled by Tony Rettenmaier and Jewel Taylor, with the latter having credits on both Creed 2 and that Space Jam sequel nobody remembers. Following that, Eli Roth also took pen to page and did his own version, so much so that he's credited as the co-writer of the final film, along with another intriguing individual we'll get to later. But to any outsiders at the time, this would have all appeared fairly normal, unless you started to actually think about it, and how it took 5 years just to get to this point. And speaking of normal, well, not so normal, I'm sure some of you will recall that the world was a bit different in 2020 and 2021, and that of course affected the movie industry, which typically has hundreds of people working closely together for weeks and or months. Lots of productions were either delayed or shut down, and those that were just starting up had to deal with plenty of restrictions and not having the regular filming locations available to them, as it was largely based on how each country was responding to the pandemic. This also could be said about the cast, in that the list of available actors who wanted to work at the time was probably a little thinner than usual, so some favors would need to be called in. Roth had previously worked with both Cate Blanchett and Jack Black on the Walls and the Clock movie that I mentioned earlier, so their involvement in Borderlands was most likely helped by that connection. As the rest of the cast, such as Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Edgar Ramirez as some bad guy, it doesn't matter because he's not Handsome Jack, just felt like a mishmash of actors who just so happened to show up, and not because they were interested in the material. This was actually semi-confirmed by Cate Blanchett herself in an interview, where the main reason she took the role was that she was suffering from cabin fever from being stuck at home for so long. So with the cast casted, the filming of Borderlands kicked off in Budapest, Hungary, lasted from April to June of 2021, and then absolutely nothing. Usually it takes the guts of a year before marketing materials like screenshots, posters, and trailers make their way online once a big film enters post-production, but yeah, not in this case. Lionsgate only released one singular image of Borderlands over the course of the next 2.5 years, and as you can see, it was not the most exciting. Damn, I feel so bad for all those websites that were forced to use this over and over again for all their articles. But why such a long post-production period? Well, despite the initial filming being 100% complete, some or all of the 18 producers were obviously not happy with it, until they eventually decided that something had to be done because the never-ending delay was kind of getting embarrassing. Little did they know, however, that the embarrassment had only just begun. At the top of 2023, the rumor mill began ablazing with the story that at some point Eli Roth had been fired from working on Borderlands, and that the film actually hadn't been completed, and that Tim Miller of Deadpool 1 and Terminator Dark Fate fame had been brought in to finish the scenes that were never shot. This, like a fair few rumors from within Tinseltown, did come from a nugget of truth, although it took an exclusive story from Deadline to clarify it. According to them, which was echoed by Lionsgate themselves, Borderlands had been completed on schedule, but they, 2K, and Gearbox agreed it needed reshoots. A lot of reshoots. And by the time that they decided on this, which was more than a year and a half later, Eli Roth was no longer available, as he had commitments to his long-gestating Thanksgiving-themed slasher film, Thanksgiving. So Tim Miller was put in charge of shooting these several weeks of reshoots, which is really common for many big pictures, dating even back to the 80s, but the circumstances here were definitely unique. Usually, when a movie initially wraps, the editing process then reveals problems with the whole, like needing more connective tissue between scenes, additional dialogue, etc., etc. But this is usually decided quite quickly so they can easily retain the services of the original director or actors, lest they get too busy with future projects. But for whatever reason, these reshoots happened well after the fact. Hell, the young actress that played Tiny Tina had grown noticeably older, so they constantly had to film her from behind or with faraway shots. Of course, the biggest red flag of hastily done reshoots, and of course studio interference, is voice-over dialogue, as it's fast, cheap, and can get across a ton of plot without having to, show a ton of plot. So that's why the finished film that played in theaters was absolutely dripping with it.
Let me tell you everything you need to know. about Pandora.
The once peaceful world was overrun with
Fighting and killing one another.
A daughter of Iridia would open the vault.
Why was there such a long delay before the reshoots began, though? Well, that's one of two mysteries I don't think we'll ever get the answers to. Maybe with Borderlands 4 entering development, Gearbox and 2K wanted to delay the film so it would sync up better with that, as it's a very Randy thing to do. Perhaps they originally wanted Eli Roth to helm the second round, but decided to wait until his commitments on Thanksgiving were done. But then those took longer than expected, so they went with Tim Miller. Or the 18 producers argued so much over the initial cut that by the time they decided a course of action, a year and a half had just blinked by. I wouldn't be surprised if it was all three, frankly. But that wasn't the only strange thing occurred in 2023. Hell, far from it. In June, it was reported that Craig Mazin had requested his name to be removed from the film's credits, as he felt either that his original script had been changed so much that it was no longer his work, or more likely, he saw an early cut of it and just said, no, yo, you better fucking not. Now, typically, when situations like these arise, a pseudonym is often used because someone just doesn't want to be associated with the work, and considering Craig Mazin was on an absolute hot streak with Chernobyl and became the showrunner of HBO's The Last of Us adaptation, you can't really blame the guy. Regardless, the enigma that is Joe Crombie suddenly started appearing in credits lists as the co-writer of the final script. But here's the kicker though. Craig Mazin confirmed to Variety he did not use a pseudonym and did not request one. If the name in question is indeed a pseudonym, all I can say is, it's not mine. Here's the second kicker though. As far as I and others can tell, Joe Crombie doesn't seem to actually exist, in the Hollywood system anyway. Sorry to any Joe Crombie fans in the comments, you guys are the real ones. You see, Joe Crombie had a problem. He had no other credits, doesn't have a profile on the Writers Guild of America, has no biography or even a single picture. He's a man without a face, without a past, like he's dark, man, I guess. This is the second mystery I doubt we'll ever get a straight answer to, but if you want a few theories, I got him. Craig Mazin is lying. I don't know why he would do this, as he's already disassociated himself from the film, but yeah, that's a remote possibility. 2, this was done to salvage Eli Roth's reputation. He's already listed under the story by credit as well as the co-writer, and since there was such a huge amount of post-production time, everyone behind the scenes probably got a good long look at this thing and knew they had a loud, irritating, incomprehensible mess on their hands, and nobody wanted to take ownership of it. So a compromise may have been reached between Roth and the producers to simply make up a pseudonym, so not all the fingers would be pointing at him. And finally, what I think is most likely, 3, Joe Crombie is a pseudonym, but for one of the 7 other possible writers who had touched the script at one point or another. Let me know what you think in the comments, by the way, and at the very least, this will hopefully become some type of hilarious Hollywood urban legend. Regardless of the truth, everyone was correct to try and distance themselves from Borderlands. When the first trailer dropped, many fans felt it did indeed look like an overt Guardians clone, which made sense when this movie was supposed to be made back in 2015, but this was 9 years later, when even the Guardians franchise was kind of stepping away from that overused, quirky tone and to something more nuanced and impactful with the third installment. The concept of video game adaptations had even changed significantly since then too, especially with The Last of Us and Fallout, or even the likes of Mario and Sonic, which at least tried to please fans with cameos and references. Borderlands, however, cobbled together its own mix of brand new material and grabbed whatever it wanted from established lore to the point where the movie didn't really resemble any one game. Even Randy Pitchford saw the writing on the wall from the fans' displeasure when he tried selling it as some sort of alternate universe that stood on its own 2 feet, even though it didn't. But no one was buying, literally. With one of the lowest aggregate review scores from any movie in 2024, along with it ending its entire theatrical worldwide run with $32 million against a budget of $120, Borderlands has the distinction of being one of the biggest box office disasters in decades. In the wake of its utter failure, Randy attempted to argue with fans on social media over the film's quality with a long tirade of tweets, but eventually gave up and started hinting that Borderlands 4 was imminent as a way to distract, and wouldn't you know it, that turned out to be accurate just a few days later at Gamescom. No doubt the initial plan was for Borderlands to be this hype, massive success that would lead into the start of the marketing campaign for the new game, but yeah, it didn't quite work out that way. But nothing didn't quite work out that way more than for Lionsgate. They lost a reported $30 million on the film and followed that up just a few weeks later with another loss on the Crow reboot. So whoever's making decisions over there, stop. What's also stopped were the plans of Borderlands becoming the next big movie franchise, because out of every one of these I've done before, I can honestly say this is the most flabbergasting. Every move made here, from the casting to the directing to the marketing, just every single decision was the wrong one. And sometimes it takes that magical combination to result in a failure this catastrophic, which is strangely appropriate for the wild and unhinged world of Pandora, I guess. Look, I'm just trying to put a positive spin on this somehow. It's hard, okay? And if you know of any other development stories from the video game or movie industries that go even harder, let me know in the comments below or open the giant stinky vault that is my social media. See you next time, and thanks for watching!